They called him Stone, not just for the way he was built, a mountain of muscle and unwavering resolve, but for the legend that preceded him. Whispers rippled through the corrugated iron alleys and choked marketplaces of Dharavi Slum, each telling of a force of nature, a man who moved like thunder and struck like lightning against the shadows that preyed on the weak. Some said he was a myth, a figment of Dharavi's desperate dreams. Others, those who had seen him move, knew Stone was real, a promise whispered on the wind. Help is coming. The air in Dharavi hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blend of spices, exhaust fumes, and the underlying scent of despair. Millions crammed into its square mile, a city within a city, a vibrant, chaotic organism teeming with life and struggle. But beneath the surface hustle, a sickness festered. Children disappeared, vanishing into the labyrinthine alleys like smoke. Fear was a constant companion, a silent tax levied by the gangs that controlled the slum's underbelly. Inspector Meera Sharma, a woman forged in the fires of Mumbai's toughest precincts, knew the whispers were more than just folklore. She'd seen the evidence, the missing person reports piling up, the terrified testimonies of families, the cold, hard truth of children being stolen, trafficked, vanished. The local authorities were stretched thin, resources scarce, and the gangs, led by a shadowy figure known only as Viper, operated with impunity, weaving through the cracks in the system like venomous snakes. Meera knew she needed something, more than procedure, more than paperwork. She needed a force multiplier, someone who could cut through the fear and the chaos, someone who could be the rock against Viper's tide. And that's when she thought of Stone. She'd heard of him. Of course, everyone in law enforcement had. The stories were almost unbelievable. A former Special Forces operative, a man with an uncanny ability to dismantle criminal networks, a leader who inspired unwavering loyalty. He operated outside the usual channels, a ghost in the machine, appearing where hope had run dry, leaving a trail of justice in his wake, and then vanishing again. Finding him was like chasing smoke. Rumors led her to a remote gym on the outskirts of the city, a Spartan space filled with the clang of iron and the grunt of exertion. And there he was. Stone. Dwayne. The Rock. Johnson, or so the world knew him. But here, in this hidden space, he was just Stone. A man stripped bare of celebrity, focused, intense, radiating a quiet power that filled the room. He was even more imposing in person than his legend suggested. Muscles coiled and ready, a gaze that could bore through steel, yet a surprising gentleness in his eyes when he acknowledged her presence. He was training with a ferocity that spoke of discipline and a deep-seated drive. Meera approached him, her police badge a stark contrast to the sweat-soaked gym environment. "Mr. Johnson," she began, hesitant. He stopped his workout, wiping sweat from his brow with a towel, his movements fluid and controlled. "Inspector Sharma, I presume? I've been expecting you." His voice was deep, resonant, carrying a hint of a smile, but his eyes remained serious, assessing. Meera was taken aback. "Expecting me? How?" Stone simply nodded towards a worn leather punching bag hanging in the corner. "Dharavi speaks, and its whispers reach even here." He gestured for her to sit, offering her a bottle of water, a surprising gesture of courtesy from a man who seemed carved from granite. Meera explained the situation in Dharavi, the trafficking, the fear, the Viper's iron grip. She laid out the facts, the statistics, the heartbreaking stories of missing children. She didn't plead, she didn't beg. She simply presented the truth, laying it bare before him. Stone listened intently, his expression unchanging, but Meera sensed a shift in his intensity, a tightening of his jaw, a flicker in his eyes that spoke of a fire being ignited. When she finished, silence hung in the air, broken only by the rhythmic clang of weights in the background. Finally, Stone spoke, his voice low and steady. "Children, Inspector? Taken from their homes, their families?" Meera nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, and worse, we suspect. Forced labor, exploitation. We don't know the full extent." Stone stood up, his towering frame casting a shadow over Meera. He walked to the punching bag, his gaze fixed on it, his muscles flexing beneath his sweat-soaked t-shirt. He drew back his fist, then unleashed a devastating punch, sending the heavy bag swinging violently. The force of the blow echoed through the gym. "Dharavi is calling," Stone said, turning back to Mira, his eyes now burning with a fierce resolve. "And I answer calls like that." A hint of his famous charismatic smile finally broke through, but it was edged with steel. "Inspector, let's assemble a team. We're going to Dharavi, and we're going to hunt down this viper." The legend of Stone was about to become Dharavi's reality, and the whispers of hope began to stir, carried on the humid air, promising that even in the darkest corners of the slum, courage could bloom, and the weak could find their protector. Stone's team wasn't assembled through official channels or bureaucratic paperwork. It was a gathering of specialists, handpicked for their unique skills and unwavering commitment, drawn together by Stone's reputation and the urgency of Dharavi's plight. Mira, initially surprised by the unconventional approach, quickly understood its necessity. They needed speed, agility, and a willingness to operate outside the rigid confines of protocol. First was Zara Khan, a cybersecurity prodigy who could navigate the digital underworld like a phantom. Her fingers danced across keyboards, cracking firewalls, tracing digital footprints, and turning surveillance systems into their eyes and ears. She was the team's digital ghost, their unseen guide through the electronic labyrinth. Then came Marco Shadow Silva, a man who knew Dharavi like the back of his hand. He'd grown up in its alleys, navigated its hidden pathways, and spoke its unspoken language. His network of informants, woven into the fabric of the slum, provided invaluable street-level intelligence, whispers and rumors translated into actionable leads. He was Dharavi's whisper made flesh, its eyes and ears on the ground. And finally, Dr. Lena Reyes, a medic with a heart as big as her skills were sharp. She'd worked in conflict zones and disaster areas, her compassion boundless, her medical expertise honed in the most challenging environments. She was the team's healer, their guardian angel, ready to mend both physical and emotional wounds. They met in a discreet location, a safe house on the edge of Dharavi, the air buzzing with anticipation and a palpable sense of purpose. Stone, standing before them, radiated a quiet confidence that was infectious. "We're here for Dharavi," he began, his voice resonating with sincerity. "Children are being stolen, lives are being destroyed. Viper and his gang are preying on the most vulnerable. We are here to stop them." He laid out the situation, the limited intelligence they had, the challenges they faced, Dharavi's dense population, the gang's deep roots, the inherent danger of operating in the slum. "This won't be easy," Stone continued. "It will be dangerous, but we will work as a team, we will protect each other, and we will bring these children home." His gaze swept over each of them, a silent acknowledgement of their skills, their courage, and their shared commitment. Zara immediately began mapping Dharavi's digital infrastructure, focusing on known gang hotspots, surveillance blind spots, and potential communication networks. Marco, melting into the slum, activated his network, his whispers spreading through the alleys, seeking information, piecing together the puzzle of Viper's operation. Lena set up a makeshift medical station, preparing for the inevitable injuries, both for the team and for the victims they hoped to rescue. Stone and Mira, working together, focused on strategy, analyzing the fragmented intelligence, identifying potential targets, and formulating a plan of action. Mira's police knowledge, combined with Stone's tactical expertise, created a potent synergy. She provided the procedural framework, the legal context, while Stone brought the unconventional tactics, the intuitive understanding of criminal minds, and the unwavering force of will. Their initial leads pointed to a series of abandoned warehouses on the outskirts of Dharavi, near the Mahim Creek. Whispers spoke of late-night truck movements, unusual activity, and a heavy guard presence in the area. It was a starting point, a thread to pull in the labyrinth of Dharavi. Under the cloak of night, they moved into Dharavi, the air immediately shifting, becoming denser, more chaotic. The vibrant energy of the daytime slum transformed into something darker, more secretive, the shadows stretching long and deep, concealing hidden dangers. Marco led the way, navigating the maze of alleys with an uncanny familiarity. Zara, monitoring their progress through satellite imagery and hacked street cameras, provided real-time updates, guiding them through potential roadblocks and patrol routes. Lena stayed close to Stone, her medical bag at the ready, her senses alert. Mira, initially slightly out of her element in this unconventional operation, found herself adapting quickly, her police instincts sharpening, her trust in Stone and his team growing with each step. They reached the warehouse district, a desolate stretch of crumbling buildings and overgrown lots. The silence broken only by the distant lapping of water against the creek bank and the rustling of rats in the shadows. The warehouses loomed like skeletal giants, dark and menacing against the moonlit sky. Zara pinpointed a specific warehouse based on unusual power consumption spikes and intercepted radio chatter. "Warehouse Delta," she whispered through their comms. "High probability of activity, heavily guarded perimeter." Stone signaled to the team, his movements precise and silent. They approached Warehouse Delta cautiously, using the shadows as cover, their senses on high alert. Marco scouted ahead, disappearing into the darkness, his movements fluid and unseen. He returned moments later, his face grim. Confirmed. Guards posted at every entrance, heavy metal doors, reinforced windows. "This place is locked down tight." Stone surveyed the warehouse, his gaze sweeping over the imposing structure, assessing its defenses, searching for a weakness. He noticed a loading dock on the far side, partially obscured by overgrown vegetation, seemingly less heavily guarded. "Loading dock," Stone murmured, pointing towards it. "Zara, can you disable cameras in that sector?" Zara's fingers flew across her tablet. "Cameras disabled, but there's a motion sensor grid and pressure plates near the door. They're expecting intruders." "Then we'll give them intruders," Stone said, a glint in his eyes. "Marco, diversion. Create some noise at the main entrance. Draw their attention. Zara, you and Lena, with me. We go in quiet." The plan was risky, audacious, but it was their only chance. Marco, with a small pre-planted device, created a sudden explosion and a plume of smoke at the main entrance, drawing the guards like moths to a flame. Zara, using her tech skills, created a temporary blind spot in the sensor grid near the loading. Doc Stone, with Zara and Lena close behind, moved swiftly and silently towards the loading dock, their hearts pounding, adrenaline surging through their veins. They were about to step into the labyrinth of Viper's lair, into the heart of darkness, in Dharavi. The rising action was reaching its peak, the tension coiled tight, ready to snap. The loading dock door, a heavy steel behemoth, was surprisingly unlocked. Or perhaps, Stone thought grimly, it was a trap. He pushed it open cautiously, slipping inside, Zara and Lena close on his heels. They found themselves in a dimly lit storage area, filled with crates and boxes, the air thick with dust and a strange metallic scent. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the distant sounds of Marco's diversion at the main entrance. Zara quickly deployed a small drone, its camera, feeding live images back to her tablet, mapping the interior layout of the warehouse. The drone revealed a vast cavernous space beyond the storage area, divided into sections by makeshift walls and partitions. And within those sections, children. Dozens of children, their faces pale and gaunt, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion, were huddled together in makeshift cages, behind wire mesh and locked doors. The sight was sickening, a punch to the gut, a confirmation of their worst fears. Forced labor, human trafficking on a scale far greater than they had imagined. "This is horrific," Lena whispered, her voice choked with emotion, her hands clenching into fists. Stone's jaw tightened, a cold fury rising within him. "Zara, any sign of Viper?" Zara's drone scanned the warehouse interior. "Office section, further in, heavily guarded, looks like a command center." "That's our target," Stone stated, his voice low and dangerous. "We need to get to those children, and we need to take down Viper. Now!" As if on cue, the silence shattered. A sudden alarm blared through the warehouse, deafening and piercing, signaling that their presence had been detected. Guards, alerted by the alarm and Marco's diversion, began converging on their location, their shouts echoing through the vast space. "They're on to us!" Zara yelled, her voice barely audible above the alarm. "Marco's diversion bought us some time, but they're closing in fast. Time to move," Stone roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Lena, you focus on freeing the children. Zara, cover us, guide us. I'll deal with the guards." The climax erupted. Guards, armed with automatic weapons, burst into the storage area, their faces masked, their eyes cold and ruthless. Stone moved, a force of nature intercepting the first wave of attackers, his movements a blur of controlled aggression. He disarmed, disabled, and neutralized the guards with brutal efficiency, his training and experience taking over, his body, a weapon honed to perfection. Lena, with Zara guiding her through the layout via comms, raced towards the cages, her nimble fingers working on the locks, freeing the terrified children, urging them to move to the relative safety of the storage area. Zara, meanwhile, provided tactical support, hacking into the warehouse security system, manipulating lighting, jamming communications, and pinpointing enemy positions. Her voice, calm and focused, was their lifeline in the chaos. The warehouse became a battleground, a maelstrom of gunfire, shouts, and the desperate cries of the children. Stone, a one-man army, held off wave after wave of guards, his strength and resilience seemingly limitless. He moved through the chaos, a shield for Lena and the children, his every action driven by a fierce protectiveness. They fought their way, deeper into the warehouse, towards the office section, towards Viper. The resistance grew fiercer, the guards more desperate, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. Stone took hits, bullets grazing his arm, bruising his ribs. But he pressed on, fueled by adrenaline and the unwavering determination to rescue the children and bring Viper to justice. Finally, they reached the office section, a fortified area with reinforced steel doors and heavily armed guards. This was Viper's inner sanctum, his command center, his lair. The final confrontation was at hand. Stone signaled to Lena and Zara to stay back, positioning himself in front of the steel doors, a lone figure facing overwhelming odds. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the final push, his heart pounding in his chest, his muscles screaming in protest, but his spirit unbroken. He kicked down the steel doors, shattering the lock, bursting into Viper's office like a force of nature. Inside, surrounded by monitors displaying surveillance feeds of the warehouse, sat Viper. A lean, wiry man with cold, reptilian eyes. He was calmly observing the chaos unfolding on the screens, a cruel smile playing on his lips. He was expecting Stone. He had been waiting for him. "Stone," Viper hissed, his voice laced with venom. "The legend arrives. Finally." He gestured towards the monitors, a macabre display of the children caged and terrified. "Impressive, how far you've come. But this is where it ends." He reached for a gun lying on his desk, a sleek silver pistol. The climax reached its peak. Stone and Viper, face to face, the forces of justice and darkness poised for a final, desperate showdown. The fate of the children, the soul of Dharavi, hung in the balance. The air crackled with tension, the silence broken only by the distant alarms and the pounding of their hearts. The most tense point, the drastic action was about to unfold. Viper lunged for his gun, but Stone was faster. Years of training, honed reflexes, and a burning sense of righteous fury propelled him forward. He moved like lightning, intercepting Viper's reach, his hand clamping down on the gun, wresting it from his grasp. The gun clattered to the floor, the sound echoing in the tense silence of the office. Viper, enraged, lunged at Stone, a desperate animalistic attack. He was no match for Stone's raw power and combat expertise, but he fought. With a ferocity born of desperation, fueled by the fear of losing everything, the office became a confined battleground, a brutal close-quarter struggle between two opposing forces. Stone, though battered and bruised from the warehouse fight, remained a force of nature. He absorbed Viper's wild attacks, deflecting blows, countering with precise, disabling strikes. He fought not with anger, but with a cold, calculated efficiency, his focus unwavering, his goal clear: to neutralize Viper and end his reign of terror. The fight was short, brutal, and decisive. Stone, using his superior strength and skill, overpowered Viper, pinning him against the wall, his forearm pressed against Viper's throat, cutting off his air. Viper gasped for breath, his eyes wide with fear, his face contorted in rage and defeat. "It's over, Viper," Stone growled, his voice low and dangerous. "Your reign of terror ends here." Viper, choking, could only manage a weak, defiant glare. He knew he was beaten. The police, alerted by Mira and guided by Zara's intel, stormed the warehouse, sirens wailing, lights flashing, securing the perimeter and taking control of the chaotic scene. Marco, having successfully diverted the initial guards, rejoined the team, his relief palpable, his streetwise instincts still on high alert, ensuring the area was secure. Lena, with the help of arriving paramedics, began tending to the rescued children, their faces etched with trauma, but their eyes slowly regaining a flicker of hope. The sight of Lena's gentle touch, her soothing words, was a balm to the raw wounds of the warehouse battle. Zara, her fingers flying across her tablet, ensured all digital evidence was secured, Viper's network dismantled, his communication channels severed. She worked with the police cybercrime unit, providing them with the data they needed to bring down Viper's entire organization, root and branch. Mira, finally arriving in Viper's office, found Stone standing over a subdued and handcuffed Viper, the scene a stark tableau of justice served. Relief washed over her, exhaustion and exhilaration warring within her. They had done it. Against overwhelming odds, they had stormed the Viper's nest and rescued the children. The warehouse, once a symbol of darkness and exploitation, was now bathed in the flashing lights of police vehicles and the dawning light of a new day. The consequences of the climax were unfolding, the cooling down process beginning, the immediate danger receding. Stone, his body aching, his spirit weary but satisfied, watched as the children were led away, their small figures silhouetted against the dawn light. He knew the healing process would be long, that the scars of their trauma would take time to fade. But they were safe now. They were free. The echoes of the climax, the sounds of gunfire and shouts, were fading, replaced by the quieter sounds of rescue and relief. The consequences of their actions were rippling through Dharavi, sending a message that even in the deepest shadows, courage could prevail, and the weak could find their protectors. The falling action was settling, the immediate crisis resolved, but the long-term impact of their courage was just beginning to unfold. The aftermath in Dharavi was a slow but tangible shift. The immediate relief of Viper's capture and the rescue of the children was palpable, a collective exhalation of breath held too long. Fear still lingered, but it was now tempered with a nascent hope, a sense that the tide had turned. The rescued children were placed in care, receiving intensive therapy, education, and the simple comforts of safety and love they had been denied for so long. Lena, staying in Dharavi, dedicated herself to their long-term recovery, her compassion a constant presence in their lives, helping them to heal, to rebuild, to rediscover their lost childhoods. Zara's digital takedown of Viper's network was comprehensive, crippling his organization and leading to arrests across the city and beyond. The corrupted officials who had enabled Viper's operations were exposed and brought to justice, a cleansing wave sweeping through the city's underbelly. Marco, returning to Dharavi's alleys, became a guardian, a silent sentinel, his network, now focused on prevention, on ensuring no new Viper could slither into the power vacuum. He was the embodiment of Dharavi's resilience, its internal defense mechanism, its promise to protect its own. Stone and Mira remained in Dharavi for weeks, overseeing the recovery efforts, working with community leaders, NGOs, and local authorities to establish sustainable support systems. They focused on long-term solutions, education programs, job training initiatives, community policing, empowering Dharavi to heal itself from within. Stone, though a force of nature in action, worked quietly behind the scenes. His presence, a source of strength and inspiration, his actions speaking louder than words. He visited the children's shelter, not for photo opportunities or public accolades, but to connect with them, to offer a silent reassurance, a promise of protection. He saw in their eyes not just trauma, but also resilience, a spark of hope that refused to be extinguished. He met with Mira on the rooftop overlooking Dharavi, the sprawling slum now bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, a panorama of life and struggle, resilience and hope. "You brought the dawn to Dharavi, Stone," Mira said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You and your team. You changed everything." Stone looked out over the slum, his gaze thoughtful, his expression humble. "Dharavi changed itself, Inspector. It just needed a spark. The courage was always here, in the people, in the community. We just helped to fan the flames." He knew the fight wasn't over, that the challenges facing Dharavi were deeply ingrained, systemic, but he also knew that something profound had shifted. The main conflict was resolved. Viper was gone. The children were rescued. But the deeper resolution was the awakening of Dharavi's own courage, its own determination to build a better future. The lessons were clear. Courage is contagious, even in the darkest places. Protecting the weak is not just a duty, but a responsibility that strengthens us all, and humanity, even in the face of overwhelming despair, can prevail. The message was one of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of collective action. As Stone prepared to leave Dharavi, he carried with him not just the weariness of battle, but also the profound emotional weight of the experience. He had touched the heart of Dharavi, felt its pulse, witnessed its resilience, and been deeply moved by its spirit. He had come to Dharavi as Stone, the legend, but he was leaving as Dwayne, the man, forever changed by the courage he had witnessed and the hope he had helped to ignite. Dharavi was still Dharavi, a slum of immense challenges and complexities. But now, a new narrative was being written, a story of resilience, of community, of a dawn breaking over the darkness. And Stone knew, with a quiet certainty, that the seeds of hope they had planted would take root, would grow, and would blossom into a brighter future for Dharavi and its children. The final emotions were a blend of exhaustion, satisfaction, and a deep, abiding hope. The main conflicts were resolved, but the journey of healing and rebuilding had just begun, and Dharavi finally had a chance to truly rise.